Lynn. She coming?
She was here at 2 o'clock, so she was text.
Oh, there's our presenter. Guy, okay, good. Evan. Yeah, he's gonna be.
Hello, good afternoon.
Hello.
Hi, I guess we're starting the meeting.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do we roll call? Here.
Here.
Steve Set.
Here.
And now. Dave Knudsen.
Here.
And the approval of the agenda. If they would-
I will be for the agenda.
All in favor of approving the agenda? Aye. Nays? Okay. That passes forward. Now we have the contractor presentation on school building potential use, and I'm gonna take a guess and say that's this gentleman, Mr. Evans here.
Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself? I'm not exactly sure how to say your last name.
Yeah, that's me. And if you don't mind, we're just going to wait 1 second. Hopefully the third member of our team is going to join here.
Great.
But my name is Evan Falavine, and I'm a project manager with Beecher Development Services. Matt Beecher is also on the phone. He just joined us as well. So we work together.
Hello, everybody.
Howdy.
Hello.
And then Martin Goldstein is a principal architect, and we've been working with him on some ideas for this concept. So he should be joining us very shortly. And then how much time do we have just so we're...
Well, we're just starting our meeting.
Okay.
And why don't we go around and introduce ourselves so that you know who you're talking to?
Dave Knudsen, I'm a trustee and a member of the planning commission.
My name is Monica Foguth. I'm the chair of the planning commission.
Mary Backer, Mayor Peonia, and a member of the planning commission.
And how member of planning commission.
Steve Clisette, member of the Planning Commission and the Board of Appeals.
Great. Martin just joined. Martin, do you want to introduce yourself real quick? You're on mute.
You're on mute.
Martin Goldstein, great to meet you, founding principal at Venture Architecture.
And I do have, for the committee, I do have a quick presentation if you'd like me to pull that up, or we can just have a conversation, whatever's best for you.
Why don't you go ahead and put up your presentation?
Sure.
Show your screen and let's see what you got.
1 second. Okay, is that on the screen for you guys? Great. So went through introductions, myself, Matt, and Martin. We are all down in Denver, just to be clear on that. Real quick, just so everybody is on the same page, we're talking about the listing at 218 4th Street. It's on the northeast corner of 4th and Grand. It's the old school building, one of the old school buildings on that in that area. And I want to, before we share kind of our plan and our concept, I just want to go through some questions and challenges and considerations that we feel we'll need more information on. Probably not going to get every answer tonight. We understand, just out of respect for everybody's time, but first of all, we just want to understand, what does the town of Paonia need? We understand there was a housing assessment that may have been done. So the first question was, has that been done, and what were the results of that assessment?
We have a housing arts market assessment done in relation to space to create.
Sure.
That was done several years ago. That was back 2019. We
Okay.
just recently received innovative housing grant planning assessment grant, and that we haven't even done an RFP for that.
Got it. So a couple of the demographics that we're targeting, or we feel could most benefit from a housing concept on this property, are
Just sorry, Evan, real quick. I just wanted to ask a question.
Sure.
We have it down a little bit later. The innovative housing planning grant that you mentioned, putting an RFP out for that. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that grant is and what it is that you're looking for?
It's going to do a preliminary housing needs assessment.
So that's that you're gonna hire a firm to do an assessment of what the housing needs are for Paonia.
Correct.
is there
Do you have a time frame on when you plan to have that assessment instituted and complete?
Hopefully by the end of we hope for mid-year.
Thank you. Sorry, Evan, go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. So just real quick, like I said, we see 3, if not more, demographics that could benefit greatly from housing in town. 55 plus kind of retiree demographic looking to downsize but maintain their independence. Strong sense of community. In our conversations, it sounds like a lot of people up there may have 5, 10, 20 acres, and they're kind of getting the age where they want to downsize. So concept like this could fit well. Also know that medical and other local workers need to try to make it easier for them to live in town. It sounds like, reading through some articles from past meetings and news articles, that might be a concern, is transient medical and other workers want to keep them local. And then, like you mentioned, also trying to incorporate space to create, which we understand may have been stalled during the COVID pandemic, but can we incorporate something like that, or in some form or fashion, include that concept in this housing development? And I'll kind of just run through all of these, and we can discuss further after that, if you're okay with that. But the next item is density. The lot that we're looking at is about 2.5 acres. Effectively, it's less than that because there is an existing easement, access easement for lot 2, which is. Sorry, did somebody say something?
No.
Oh, okay. It's an existing access easement for, I believe it's a storage building or some sort of a maintenance building. We could if we could either move or get rid of that easement, there could be additional units that would fit on the property, but we're just curious what the ideal density would be on this site. Obviously, as we get further down here, there's a constraint with the water moratorium that we want to talk about, but want to understand what the ideal density would be for the town. The next one is a big one. So it's affordable versus what we refer to as attainable. So affordable is, by the letter of the law, truly affordable housing, which carries with it certain regulations, restrictions, but also certain incentives, we believe. So attainable, by that, we just mean market rate, but since we're building more efficient, lower square footage houses, the price point is lower, so it might be more attainable for more people.
And just one point, if I can jump in, Evan, I think we were wanting this to be conversational too. So if anyone wants to jump in and we want to address or spitball on these topics, please don't hesitate. This is meant to be kind of a working conversation.
Absolutely. And I'm happy to send this presentation to all of you if you'd like to think about it more, and we can continue the conversation past tonight. So please jump in if you have any comments or questions.
Yeah, sending it to us would be really helpful. Thank you.
You bet.
I mean, bottom line, we're trying to understand what Paonia needs. What are the goals for that site? We do understand that you had the space to create concept. We also understand that there's a need for housing, not just in Paonia, but in Delta County, throughout the state. And so, what kind of housing? Is it for rent? Is it for sale? Is it detached? Is it attached? Do people want apartments? Do they want homes? Do they want townhome styles? Do they want patio home styles? Evan will go to look at some demographics here in a minute, but really that's what we're kind of hoping to hear from you all is, what it is that you think would be most useful for the community there.
At least in my mind, I'm hoping that our planning grant will give us that information. Because then it's going to go out to the community and ask the community what they want versus, what living in my brain, which is not necessarily what the community wants.
So we might be just about 6 months ahead of the game here by asking this question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so along those lines, my next question would have to do with the water. We were told by the listing agent that the current water tap for this going into the school would support about 12 to 15 residents. We also understand that there's a water moratorium in place. What does it look like in order to get the moratorium lifted? When does that end? What options are out there?
That's a huge question about whether 12 to 15 residences would be supported by that current tap. We don't really know the answer to that off the top of our heads, I don't think.
Well, it's being discussed by our lawyer and our interim town administrator right now. But yeah, we need the way the water moratorium is currently written, we would need an engineer's statement saying that we have sufficient water to support more water taps. And at this point in time, we do not have that statement. And we have an interim report. There's supposed to be another report coming out, I think somewhere around the end of the year, beginning of the next year, stating they've been collecting data, stating where they're at now, but I don't know what that report is going to say. One of the things we're addressing later on in this meeting is where we're looking at future water taps and where we think we might want future water taps. And that's part of what the engineering company that's looking at this would like to know from us. So that's part of our discussion tonight.
I would imagine that the timing of the information that comes out of the Innovative Housing Planning Grant, that the timing of that information will want to kind of fold in with the timing of the engineer's report on the water availability.
Correct.
And when you said that you were expecting that information at the end of the year, you mean end of 22 or the end of 23?
No, I suspect it's going to come early in 2023.
Early 2023, thank you.
And there are, as kind of a related question there are a couple of different concepts that can be considered. Obviously, we focused on demolishing the one-story portion of the school and adding new detached housing, but there's also the potential to keep the entire existing building and build out the existing building. So it'd be interesting to find out if that answer for how much can be supported changes, whether we're using the existing building or demoing the building and building new housing.
Evan, why
And
don't
I
you show
think-
them the concepts that we were thinking about?
Yeah.
And I don't know that that makes a difference right now, according to what, the way the water tap moratorium has been interpreted.
So here is just a very rough conceptual sketch of how we have looked at this property. So hopefully you can see it clearly, but what we're showing is multiple dwellings kind of surrounding a common area, community garden with some amenities, and then leaving part of the existing school building, the two-story portion, which is highlighted in blue. We've tried to add some parking, which is shown in dark red as carports, potentially with solar. And then we're also showing the existing easement, which is kind of restricting how far north on the property we go. But this is kind of the concept, is some relatively dense homes that are, potentially in the 700 to 900 square foot range, 1 and 2 bedrooms that surround a common area space. And then using, again, that two-story portion of the existing school as
Are you folks at all familiar with the term intentional communities?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so that was really what we were looking at here, is an intentional community type plan where everyone has their own individual home, but they share a community kitchen, a community maker space, a potential farmer's market. They share a community garden or greenhouse. They kind of all chip in and work together and live together in this, I won't say co-housing, but this intentional community and creating a space. The idea then was that the rest of the community, the rest of Peonia could come in and go to the farmer's market once a weekend. That the inhabitants that live in the intentional community, that they're using the old school space for art and makerspace and crafts, and they could use, in turn, set that old school building up as a market that they could have the other citizens of Paonia use and come in and see. So that's kind of the concept that we were going with here.
Does it make sense to unpack that a little bit, like how this originated? I mean, it's a beautiful site with a lot of options and an old building that the term we would use in the office here is looks like good architectural fabric from the existing building. And depending, because of its flexibility, depending on what will be a fit for the community, there's several ways this project could be developed in a way that's beneficial and exciting. We had a great time looking at it because of how, I think, flexible and well located it is.
Okay.
Evan, you want to show some sample examples of the type of product?
Yep. So just a couple of, these would be prefab options that the three of us are personally familiar with, but a couple of local Colorado companies, Studio Shed and Indie Dwell. A company like Indie Dwell in particular might be a good fit for a project like this, especially if there's an affordable component, because I believe they are a 501c3 in Colorado, and they focus on affordable housing products throughout the state. So a couple of photos of what some of their housing looks like. Can look more modern, can look more traditional, but it still looks like a nice home. We're not talking about a mobile home park here. So couple of options there. And then I have included some links to other communities around the country that we feel speak to what we're trying to accomplish with this concept. They're all different in certain ways, but just some examples of communities around the country that have made this work, and they've made this kind of intentional community that Matt's talking about work in their area. So I've included links, and So.
Based on your current or your investigative process in this, in terms of how many units you envision to be on the property, what do you imagine that these properties would probably be valued at? Do you have an idea of that at this point?
I think that. Sorry, Evan. I was going to say I think that would greatly depend on if we were going to put in technically correct affordable housing, right? If this was supposed to be affordable and went by the definitions of affordable based on the average median income in the area, we would need to understand what incentive structures were available out there in terms of whether that's fees waived or tax breaks, things like that would change. That if these were market rates, that's a completely different discussion. And the other part of this is we really don't know if is this a for rent market or is this a for sale market? And the financials are different either way depending on which one you go with. And it could be a mix of for sale versus a mix of for rent. But we're really, that's what we were kind of hoping to understand. But we understand that it'll be based on the innovative housing grant study. So I'll tell you that market rate rents, you know, if the median gross rent in Paonia is $833, if 15 units were renting at $800, the deal doesn't pencil without some kind of incentives or help from the government.
Yeah, person.
Thank you. So you have done these developments in other areas? Were those the listing of the developments you've done already?
No, those were not our projects. Those are just examples of other communities around the country. We were not involved in those.
But you have done these eco villages before, or this will be a new thing for you?
This would be a new venture. We've built a lot of product across a lot of different markets, and I've personally built prefabricated units with Studio Shed. But as far as a community and multiple units, have not done that yet.
I've done multifamily housing, high-rise apartments, walk-up apartments, things like that, more in an urban setting, but not this particular product.
Yeah, I think there's a story to be told, right? That we've all done multifamily, and this became a bit of a passion project and a curiosity based on what a intricate and interesting property it is.
Right.
And how were you led to Paonia? Were you just found this site, or you were told about this, or how did the context of it?
Matt?
Well, both myself and Evan have been to Paonia a few times before, and I was up there recently a few weeks ago, and I stayed at the Bross and walked by the school and walked around the town, and I saw the school, and you know, Evan is a big fan of the town. He's been there a number of times with his past Studio Shed. You know, so what do you think about this? And to let you know a little bit of history, there's a church site down in Littleton, Colorado that I looked at doing about 60 of these, a similar intentional community on. And both Evan and I have a passion for creating communities and trying to provide housing in a different way. We have a problem in the United States as a whole, but we definitely have a problem in Colorado, especially on the western slope, with the cost of construction and what developers think that they need in profit margins, and then how that translates down to the cost of housing for people. So we think between Evan's experience with doing prefabricated housing and prefabricated accessory dwelling units, Martin's experience with some projects that he's done in Pueblo, And my experience in the development community and raising money, we think we have an opportunity to do this product, and we think that this particular site and the community in the town of Paonia lends itself very well to this. It seems you all would be a little bit more open for an intentional community than say, downtown Denver.
And what is it that you're asking from the town besides going through the planning and zoning process and working in conjunction with the town? But what are you asking for anything else from the town in terms of?
And I mean, I think is it fair to say that someone was just opening a conversation on, we've all had this curiosity about the site and learning more. I mean, that's where some of the questions came in, right? About the past and the future and water and culture and what might be appealing to the town in this location. It's a property that offers a lot of options to be activated in a beneficial way. So I think the idea was more to start a conversation and see if that's something that is appealing, and if so, not to be presumptuous, but quite the opposite, to learn and try and identify what might be a good fit.
Are you aware of the similar development out on Clark Street? I forget what the name of it is. Silverleaf. Are you aware of that development that was started? When was it started? About 10 years ago? 2019. 2019. And it started out very promising as far as affordable housing, and then it went up. I don't know where it is now. I don't know how successful they are. They have quick sales, but something is for sale. The tenants love it, the owners love it. I don't know. It's very under the radar. But are you aware of that?
We were not. What's it called?
Silverleaf.
Silverleaf on Clark Street, I believe, in Colorado. In Paonia. But it would be good because it's very similar, and except that yours is higher density, that's for sure. Whichever way you do this here, it's full of thanks. So just to get an idea. Yeah, and if there is an interest in people moving here, people like their open spaces and their yards and their gardens, their private personal space too. This is more like people that are retired.
As it's still relief. I mean, part of the thing that you say about it getting expensive, everything's gotten expensive.
Yeah.
It's just everything's gone up.
Yeah, but at the beginning, it was promised as something very affordable.
Yep.
For the community, and it turned out to be quite the opposite.
That's true.
We get a lot of.
And I would disagree with that, because I was intimately involved with the person who was buying a house there. It was never promises.
It was never what?
It was never promises affordable. Never.
To be affordable.
It was never promised as affordable. It was for promises of retirement, whole house of the community.
And as somebody of a millennial generation who works in town, there isn't any housing. I have got very, very, very lucky that I got to buy a house. Nobody my age can afford to live here, period, end of story. So if we can build more housing, I'd love to see it. And then everybody else who wants to work here would like to see it too. Is there any other questions before we move on and make a motion?
I think affordable is.
You're just listening out.
I think affordable is a really important piece that's come up more than once in front of our commission. And I think it's important to kind of remember that as we move forward and consider something like this. Because, much as there are a lot of people who have moved here and have been able to capture whatever value they have elsewhere and come into town and buy houses at, much higher rates. The reality is that people who have lived here for a long time, particularly millennials, have struggled and continue to struggle with trying to find something that's affordable. I have one suggestion for you guys that's a practical one. There in Delta, there is a company called Look Building. And they are an offshoot of a engineered truss company that manufactures structures, designs and manufactures structures that can just like stand up, just like you're talking about with companies in Paonia and stuff like that. And I would encourage you to maybe open a conversation with them, because obviously it's to the benefit of us all if we're using locally sourced materials and labor in a project like this. It's going to help the community overall. But it's Look Building.
We will look into that. Thank you.
I have just one more question.
Real quick, last question before we move on.
That's Silver Leaf. How many taps, water taps did they get?
I mean, what?
Water taps did they get?
Many as there are.
So one water tower units, they're about 24 units.
Oh, God.
It's like 10.
I think there's 12. Okay, next item on the agenda is presentation of GIS overlay and other types.
It might be helpful for you to see the result of the community planning session that we had in June of 25th. And there were a number of comments about housing being an issue in that. And one of the things I'm confused about with your diagram, it looks to me like you are planning on tearing down the existing building in order to build these separate structures.
Would you like us to do a really quick explanation of that? Because we can, we'd be happy to talk about that. The idea is that the original, what looks to be the older part of the building would remain, and that there's a 2-story and 1-story portion. Right. And that the newer portions would come down. And then we've done 2 different concepts of 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom units that center around a courtyard. On the left, the diagram, that they're slightly bigger units. On the right, they're more of 700 and just about 1,000 square foot units. You can see the orange units on the right are larger. They'd be 2 bedrooms. And then the blue units would be 1 bedroom. And if when you get this, you want to zoom in. The idea is the green area are a series of raised planter beds. And in the middle, there's some kind of a small community space, whether it's somewhere to play a guitar or hang out and sit and have a conversation. There's a million permutations of this, but the blue belt would be something that connects the 2: outdoor patios, tables and chairs. And the building could be, if it's appropriate, housing on the upper level, and then community spaces on the lower level, whether it's art studios or area to have community room space. And the idea is they're all connected around a garden. So each of us gets a handful that live there, get a handful of the raised planter beds, but we all get the value of sitting on our porch and seeing across a beautiful garden area. I think admittedly we've got a few too many. There's probably about like 60 of them in the middle. But you can see 2 different quick concepts of that. These were just fast studies, but the idea is that it builds its own intentional, smaller, intentional kind of focused community that's efficient, and everybody gets their own space, 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms, and a whole lot of ways this could work. But it was meant to be more of a thought starter.
The reason I'm questioning is because I've seen redevelopments of old buildings where they're not actually tearing down the old building, but they're actually converting those classroom-sized buildings to like studios and then adding bathrooms, which, part of the concern is the sustainability. And
sure.
How much you're getting rid of old materials where you could just redevelop, or you could rebuild inside there and have a number of small studio apartments. Some communities are offering studio spaces for $600 or $700 a month, which would be really helpful for the people that are working here in the community. The second thing I wanted to bring up that's really important is a lot of future affordable housing has been under government programs. And people pretty much get trapped in that instead of moving toward the ability to purchase. And so actually being able to buy a house and on the road to being able to purchase something is also real attractive.
Well, so if I can kind of hop on those really quick, because those are excellent points. We've all done on this end, Beecher and Venture, a number of adaptive reuse projects and are looking at several right now where we're converting existing buildings to multifamily. And you're spot on, the most sustainable building is one that's already been built. So there's a lot of value in reusing the existing product. And that's kind of why we left it there as a part of the conversation. And similarly, and Matt and Evan, you guys can jump in here, but that was the affordability, attainability, lease, rent, those are also completely on the table as well as to what would be appropriate for the community and what all of you would prefer to see.
Yeah, I can imagine, to Dave's point, that it would cost a lot less money to just put a little affordable kitchen or kitchen and a bathroom in these classrooms, and just retrofit what's already there, and then also repair what needs to be done. That would probably cost quite a bit less.
Well, and that's where our study work comes in, right? Is that it always seems that way, and sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. What's nice about the blend is that these products that are made in state, they're not made in the county, but they're actually very smartly envisioned so that they're quite reasonable too. And what we would do if we get to a next step and it's appropriate is to study which option is most economical and pursue that and let that drive the solution.
And it's also about what's desirable and what people want, right? Somebody earlier made the comment that the folks in that area, they like to have their own land. They like to have their own yard and their own garden to work in. And that's part of the reason we showed possibly taking the school down, is because we don't know the demographic up there. And that's why we wanted to have this meeting to understand, would people want to live in an old classroom that was converted and live in an old school building, or would they rather have their own 700 square foot individual house with its own space? You don't share walls. You're not sharing a common area or a common corridor and hallways. And we're not against or for either one. We just are trying to understand what the people want.
Well, people want affordable housing, and they want that. That's like the top thing. Like, the people that can buy here will buy the house with the yard, and they have $500,000 to spend on it. This wouldn't be for that. Like, we just have an emergency crisis of people who work here who really are homeless. I'm not even kidding. People living out of their cars, people living in campers. So yeah, like, they just want something affordable. And so however we can make that happen is our job. One
That's
more
very
question
helpful.
that we do really need to provide. One more.
One quick comment is, small town like Paonia benefits more from property owners than renters.
Okay.
It's
All right, well, thank you for your presentation. Thank you so much. I'm sure we'll be in touch with more questions.
I would make a motion that we have moved item number, the review of the
intergovernmental agreement, IGA.
Then we move back to the next item.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Why don't you go ahead and we'll discuss yours, and then we'll go ahead and do the GIS.
There's not anybody.
Yeah.
All right.
And I would be happy to forward you the strategic planning session. So thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming.
Thank you. Good
and
to see you.
Thanks for your time.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so motion carries, it sounds like. Are we all in favor of moving up the GIS topic up to next? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. All right. So, go ahead and present your review of the intergovernmental agreement.
Yeah, well,
You have it available, put up on the screen now.
we have the map you presented. The other thing we have is we have Jeremiah's comprised map with the overlay, with the town of Paonia and the whole water system, and then the
Okay.
all of that. And then if you can kind of shrink that down, Sam, and show what the, Not by that long.
We can start with
Yeah,
this one. If you
yeah,
like.
go for it.
Good evening, I'm Carl Hall, I'm the community development director for Delta County. We've been in conversations relative to the intergovernmental agreement. We're in the process of a land use code update, and the original land use code adopted in 2021, there wasn't any change to the IGA, but we've had some changes in the land use code that I think, warrant a discussion on the intergovernmental agreements. So the county GIS took what zoning maps that we had and applied that to the town boundaries. And then under the current IGA, it shows the growth management areas. And so what we want to talk about is, are those appropriate growth management areas? And I think that goes to also where is the current infrastructure go? Water and sewer. What is the town currently serving? Because if you're providing services, then that could be an area that if there's, even if it's development in the county, you obviously have an interest because you're providing services to those lands. The growth management area is also, where does the town think or might want to extend services to? And then that would become part of the growth management area. That's different than the urban growth boundary, which is a 3-mile radius from the town. So the intent under the IGA would be that any project that comes to the county that is a discretionary action, we would refer to the town if it's in the urban growth boundary, doesn't have 3-mile on it. But we want to have a more specific conversations if it's in the growth management area. Do you want to annex it? Do you want to take the lead review of the project and annex it? Or do you want to be a review agency? So who takes lead and who reviews the projects? And if you're going to annex it, then it would be subject to the town regulations. If not, it'd be subject to county regulations with the town input. So that's what we're trying to accomplish in this IGA, and map out accordingly kind of where the growth management area is, as far as where we need to have those conversations. The IGA also speaks to that we won't approve projects in the growth management area with cisterns or wells unless the town approves it, because we don't want to be creating a situation that doesn't meet the town standards in that growth management area. Similarly, there's a question of whether or not sewer is extended to certain areas. Just kind of an aside and kind of in light of the previous conversation, the county also has gotten a grant from DOLA to do a planning grant for a housing strategy. We're looking at the housing strategy as really being around the municipalities where there are services. Outside, there isn't the water. We don't have sewer. We don't have those kind of capabilities for the density to get to affordable housing. But so we want to develop a housing strategy working with the municipalities as far as how that works in the unincorporated areas, which specifically will affect the areas around you. Also, as we're going through this land use code update, the areas that are the growth management areas closer to the town, we had zoned as urban growth area, which allows minimum lot size of 7,500 square feet. We're actually, in this update, we're deleting that zoning designation. But we're adding 2 residential zoning designations, a 1 acre minimum and a 2.5 acre minimum. And currently under the land use code, we have 5 acre minimum, 20 acre and 35 acre. So it gives a better range for the residential type of uses. We were finding that the urban growth area zoning, even when somebody would come in and they would want to subdivide or develop at that density, we have a project next to the city of Delta. Well, it didn't have the services to really develop at that density. So until we get to that point, we don't think that it should be zoned that way. So we want to have the conversation, and which kind of goes to the IGA. How do we zone the areas that are in that growth management area as well? So it's, what does that growth management area boundary look like? What would the town like to see it zoned? we have rural industrial commercial, we have the residential zoning. What fits the best as far as the town's plans if the town were to grow, but also just if, the county develops around it, how it fits with the town's vision for your town. I think that's the high points. I mean, Mary, we've had other conversations. If there's something you'd like me to hit on, I'm happy to, but.
Well, show us on the map where the growth management area is and where the urban growth area is.
So for Paonia, the growth management area is all of this gray.
Right.
All this dark gray, including this federal land, which probably just should come out anyway, because that's not gonna happen. But so it's a very large area. Which again, it is okay, but really the intent is where are the areas that the town is going to provide services or grow to. That's what we want to kind of focus as a growth management area. So is this reflective of that? If not, then what is? And that's I think the conversation that we want to have as we work on this. We recognize the Highway 133 corridor. Clearly, that would be a growth management area. There's a plan in place for that. And that would be recognized in the IGA.
Where's the urban growth area?
The urban growth area isn't really reflected. This really just focused on the growth management area.
Okay.
So the 3 mile radius actually overlaps with Hopkins. I mean, you get right around that middle point of the 3 miles, and so there'd be some overlap there when you go out 3 miles from the town boundary.
So now, Sam, can you pull up Jeremiah's map? Because it shows where our water goes to and then overlays the growth management area on top of that.
While you're doing that, could I just ask, is that map you were just showing Exhibit A that wasn't provided in the packet? There's a reference to Exhibit A in the
I don't know.
IGA.
Is that? Yes.
Is it? Okay. Because of the UGA, I was looking at the county maps, the UGA, which is quite a bit different than what you have here. This new one looks like it's drastically different and a drastically different approach than what the UGA is on the current Delta map for Paonia.
So again, if I may, just the urban growth area is the 3 mile boundary. So yes, that is much broader. The growth management area is that shaded area is a subset of that. And so what we did as far as mapping is what's currently shown as the growth management area in the existing intergovernmental.
Right, but it's so different than the UGA. Because my question.
Yes.
So are you essentially going to abandon the UGA that's on the current Delta maps and supersede that with these new definitions that are in this IGA?
Yes.
Okay.
Or Sam? So I think what we've got now that I think that outline, that strike you, the brown outline is what our growth management.
Limits of the water, is that what you're saying?
No, the growth management area.
Growth
I believe
management.
is that brown- is that black outline? Does that seem right to you?
Yes.
Okay, so then, as you can see, some of our pipelines are heading off to the right there.
Is that Minnesota Creek?
It's Minnesota.
Yeah, Minnesota Creek. Sure.
And you've got stuff off to, God, I was looking at this earlier. We've got. Did Jeremiah send you this stuff? Did you get this or the access to this stuff from Jeremiah?
Went to our GIS team. Yes.
Yeah, and have you had a chance to look at this? Because we've got. There's the red. Oh,
Yeah, we haven't integrated that into the other map layer at this point.
it's the red dots. It's the red dots. for the purple ones are water service connections. The yellow ones are standby taps. Yes, according to this GIS map, we're all inside. Yeah, and those.
And then there's the one
They look like they're red.
down on the shelf, right on the board.
Purple with X's in them. Water connection. Sorry, yeah, these are all water.
What do you mean by a water connection?
I mean, we're eating that. So, yeah, we're taking water out beyond growth management area out here for sure.
And it looks like you have lines outside
Yeah,
the
we
growth management area down here too.
We do, we have stuff, and not all our taps are on it. We've got a couple out here. And all of our taps are on, according to Jeremiah, because they have all not been GIS, they weren't all captured in the SGM.
Okay.
So we have stuff that's outside of what you have as our growth management area, that we are supplying water to
Right.
at this point in time.
Okay.
So we probably need to expand the growth management area, at least to cover everybody that we are currently supplying water.
Right, that's why I said the growth management area should be where you are providing services, but then also where you may plan to provide services
Right.
in the future.
Yeah, because we got a standby tap there
Right.
outside the line too.
Right.
We go that way, Sam? Looks like we may be okay.
I guess the question is, does the growth management area still come out this far? Is there a plan to extend services out there sometime in the future?
The master plan, doesn't it afford for like a certain agenda for the highway corridors, like specifically businesses?
Yeah, that's 133.
Yeah.
I was out that far.
Where's Midway on the map? Where's Midway on the map?
To our left.
Yeah, up this way.
So, Steve, is your area?
Ours is probably right at the boundary, our shop.
That's
Right at the top corner would be my guess,
Yeah,
because we're like a mile past Delicious, which is
Gotcha.
right by just above the Big Blue. And my thought is that because Pitkin Water is over there too, I mean, there's potential for them to extend down Highway 133, which doesn't necessarily impact the town's plans,
Right.
right? But I don't envision that the plan is that the town's plan is to be developing water sources out near where we are.
Oh, no, I know.
So, practically speaking, this is a bit, it could be truncated on the west side in a way that made more sense, but
Yeah, and as for sewer, I don't think we're taking sewer out anywhere. You think we go down, Sam? No, other way. Yeah, the only thing that we have talked about is that Stop and Save wants sewer. Their septic system is failing, and they would like to become part of the town sewer system. So we would have to cross the highway to get to Stop and Save. But I believe streets. That's grand. So this must be stall. Or
yeah, Stop and Save's at the top.
Stop and Save right there.
right, so this must be right on the edge of the Highway 132 corridor, perhaps. So yeah,
Bethlehem Road.
there's Pitkin Road. Yeah, so it may be covered at this point, but that's the only place that anybody has expressed a desire for sewer. It's out there. We do have some standby sewer taps off of Price Road. People are there on standby taps, but people have requested taps out on Price Road, and they have put money down on those taps for like 5 years ago. So at some point, you probably need to go ahead and like this tap. So that will also need to be covered under the financial expenses for out. And I think the idea, at least what I heard in the past, is that growth was going to go west and not go east. If it was the idea to follow down Highway 133.
Well, makes the most sense.
Yeah.
Are we making a decision here? What are we trying to do? What's the?
What's the intent?
I think we're looking at the IGA and saying, hey, we agree with the basic premises of the IGA. And then I guess some basic decision on.
Just so my understanding reading all of this is that there's two components of this. That the 3 mile extension is a means of or an opportunity for communication between the county and the town.
Yes.
That's open for discussion and so that the county doesn't arbitrarily, kind of make some plans that would have impacts to the community, maybe not directly because we're not providing services there, but it would have impacts in terms of traffic, et cetera, et cetera. The urban component of this, the narrow part, is the practical reality that we would have a real vested interest in the possibility of whether or not we choose, who's the lead, like you said, who's the lead in this, right? Would the town want to, annex a piece of property? And if that's the case, because of the plan that somebody's wanting to do with a piece of property, then the town might choose to annex it and therefore be the primary decider in communication with the county. Right, this is what this is all about. It's about how we communicate with each other, about what's there. Yep. Okay.
You got it exactly right. Yep.
So a couple things on the growth management area. I've heard from our citizens, a huge concern is the confined animal feeding operations that might be in there that would impact nearby houses. So that's a biggie. The second thing is, I think, just speaking for myself, the county should be the lead on that with our input. But when it comes to the urban growth area, I think it should be flipped, and it's the town with the county's input in making the decisions in urban growth areas.
Or is it just the opposite? The growth management area is the small.
My understanding, the growth management areas for the huge areas and the urban is the small.
No, it'll be the other way with the first, okay.
So look what I just said.
I was tracking and
So both in, we would be the lead on, county would give us input because it's not necessarily in the town per se at the time the development's being proposed, but it's in that growth management area, correct?
The way it's written is if the town wants to take the lead, it's because it's going to annex. Otherwise, the land is in the unincorporated area, so it's subject to the county's regulations. But we would take the input from the town for how that is to develop, or if there are concerns with the development, like if it's a subdivision and it doesn't line up with any of your roads, clearly that would be an issue. Curb gutter or extending that would be a conversation to have if it's in the unincorporated area, but within that growth management area.
Any other, I think she had her.
I just had a question that in the IGA, there's several references to section 8 below, and there is no section 8, and it's
Supposed to be H, I believe.
H, okay.
H8.
Because it looks like it's a pretty important place, because it talks about how the municipality will process requests.
Yeah, we got that type of in our last look at.
And just from my perspective, having read the IGA without having a map, and now I'm even more confused. And I think until there is a map with a good legend, I personally, as a trustee and a citizen, I don't quite understand the impact of your revised mapping to what that means for the town of Paonia without a good map.
And that's the purpose of having this conversation is to how we do come up with that. What is that growth management area? What is the zoning of the unincorporated lands outside the town boundary? Because right now, when the land use code was done before, everything was done with input from the municipalities.
I don't know the answers.
Yeah.
But so it seems to me that the IGA is a nice document, but until we actually see what's going on the ground, it's a little bit moot. Until we know exactly what we're committing to in terms of area where we have precedent and where the county has precedent.
That's exactly right. That's what that exhibit is a very important part of it. That's why we're having this conversation.
But we don't have the exhibit. That's the exhibit. Or is the exhibit yet to be defined?
No, the exhibit is yet to be defined. So the previous picture that was up there was to reflect the current IGA now. The conversation is, do we change the boundaries? And we asked, well, where do you currently provide utilities? Because that might change that growth management area boundary. And what we're seeing is it will. And so having that conversation of then how do we revise that for that growth management area boundary that would become an exhibit to the IGA. And then the second part of that is the lands within that growth management area. Well, how would the town like to see that zone using the county zone? Residential 1 acre, residential 2.5 acre, commercial, industrial. How does it fit with the town's plans? I mean, when one of the conversations we've had, I don't remember if it was with Paonia or Hotchkiss, but the concern was putting commercial development outside the town and taking away from the town's commercial viability. So that's why we want to make sure we're working together.
Great, any more? Oh, yes, that's right.
So how do you determine like the cost, analysis of this? Because really to put a sewer line, say the Stop and Save, is going to be upwards of $1 million+ dollars. So obviously the county's not involved in that. That's the town that pays for that whole line. That's a desirable property, let's say, to get incorporated. But like say Price Road, there's literally one person that needs, because their sewer is failed blocks. And there's one person that has bought a sewer line, and everybody else sort of, depending upon how town goes, doesn't really want to be incorporated in town. And financially, it's sort of like, how is that a benefit? Like to weigh in, it is a lot of money to provide those services. And what do you get back from that as a town? So, yeah, the taxes are like absolutely nothing. I mean, if you're talking about, say, $1.5 billion to put a sewer line up there and provide for that. So my question is to the county, how are you dealing with that with a person that wants to redevelop their house, but they're caught sort of in the middle? Like the town is nowhere near ready to put or have the funds to put a sewer line in there. And do you make like give special sort of dispensation for a situation like that? If there's a sewer system failing and they are not ready to tie into the town line.
We do, we would, or they can still get a septic permit through environmental health, but that's one of the things with the IGA is we're having the conversation. If the sewer isn't available, then what's the alternative? Okay, so wastewater, septic. One of the things that the county is doing in the land use code is any new single family home start with a site plan review. So rather than just go build and no review, we're looking at that. So when it comes in, do they have the ability to connect to sewer? So we have a pre-application meeting. We let the town know we got this application, you know, even the small ones. Do you have any concerns? I'll use an example, town of Cedar Edge, there was a property in the north side of town. It was within the growth management area. So we looked at the town of connecting and providing a water. However, they didn't have the water pressure to it, so the town agreed that that person could drill a well for water. So the idea is about how we communicate and how we work together on land use matter. All of them. Yeah.
All right, any more comments from the commission?
Well, just so one of the things we touched on was the reality of making sure that all the taps that are either in place or on hold be within the. I forget which one I'm supposed to. And so that should be adjusted to fit that. And we could, I mean, technically, I guess if you wanted to, you could adjust the boundary where it's unlikely that the town is going to extend mostly to the west, I would think. But I don't know that that makes that much of a difference, but minimally, we should at least include all the pieces that are part of our current infrastructure within that growth management area. And as far as the big picture, you know, I mean, the 3 mile limit is one of those things that's more importantly about communication. It's about the county communicating to the town what's going on within a reasonable limit of the town's boundaries.
And on the map, I'm a little surprised, because up like behind what would be Stop and Save, there's a lot of people that are in town who live up there. I would consider them Paonians. So I know annexing up there would probably be a big pain in the butt, but for all intents and purposes, they live here. So that I think that's maybe just think about that as something to discuss, because up on the mesas, you know, that's, I don't know how far out as far as mile radius, but I'm pretty sure that's within the 3 mile radius. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So, and it's probably just that services are really hard.
Well, and they have services. I mean, we would have to provide them sewer and water.
Right.
And so we would have to, in fact, somehow come up with an agreement with Kitchen Water
Yeah.
to deal with that. And how we would do service sewer up there, because we'd all be gravity feed down to the sewer plant. Okay, that seems like.
Yeah, it would probably be like what you said, a permit for.
Yeah.
For stuff like, not always, yeah, they would have to do other things, but it's just something to keep in mind, like. What is the town of Paonia is really probably the growth area south, and then also up on the mesas. So like.
Can we bring up the original map with the grade? Because that's what you were talking about, right, Monica?
Yeah.
There's nothing on the other
Where's
side.
There's nothing on the other side of 133, even though the 3 mile limit from the town would normally extend across 133.
Right, so that probably should be in my opinion, that should be extended as the growth management area to be considered, because there are a lot of people who live in town, use town resources, use the roads, and don't pay taxes for them. So like, it's just something to think about, like they are Paonians, and like, just because they're up on a hill, I don't know if that's necessarily like, yeah, anyway.
Is there a reason why that boundary wasn't extended on the other side of 133 that you saw?
That's
I
definitely,
don't know. Was part of the developing that map.
yeah, because that's like what am I looking at here? Northwest, that's definitely 3 miles northwest, where there's houses up there on those bases. So maybe the next time you guys do the maps.
I mean, from the looks of it, it looks like really when the IGA was done before and they were looking at the growth management area, it didn't cross the highway. Other than the 133.
Right there along Bethlehem Road.
Right.
Yeah.
But was probably in the 133 corridor.
That was only because that's where all the pot was growing and they didn't want any government.
So yeah, I guess just something to think about, because there are more and more houses being built up there. So we have to deal with it eventually. How we're gonna do it.
That's the point. It's an artificial boundary.
Yeah. So are we good? Are we ready to move on to the next motion or?
Well, I don't need an answer today. I mean, I'm looking at getting the draft IGA in front of the Board of County Commissioners kind of late March timeframe. But I wanted to start having the conversations and have maps to show the Board of County Commissioners an agreement between the two agencies. And be able to show them what the thought is, get their feedback. And then it would come back to your board for consideration of signing the agreement, entering into that agreement.
I would like to see a revised map.
Yeah.
Yeah. If there was anything, even before you brought it to the county commissioners, if we could see a revised map.
Right.
I think that would be helpful for me.
Okay. And again, any input on zoning, we'll be looking at the zoning maps once we finish the land use code update.
So, yeah, proposed new zoning for the growth management area as well as the.
And the confined animal thing.
Yeah.
And you'd like to see no even small CAPAs within the growth management area.
Yeah. That's an issue around.
I would agree completely.
I would stay out of the growth management area.
Yeah.
Sure. And including. Basins.
I mean, I can't remember your sizings of those. No, I don't know that off the top of my head, but you gotta be careful about large confined animal feeding operations close to residences. And I think the quarter mile thing is not considered to be enough of a distance for the residents around here.
And also for the type of soils we have and the waterways.
Yeah.
The contamination component.
Sounds yeah.
Continued.
So thanks for coming up. Really appreciate you coming up.
Anytime.
And now we just, before us to consider the presentation of GIS.
Jeremy, isn't it? What we're talking about now. So what the question was, is again, going back to.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so
Thank
much.
you so much.
Thanks.
So what JDS Hydro wants is they want us to look at. So first off, if we look at the yellow dots and the list that we have, the long list and then the short list. This is where our standby caps are. These are the caps that we have committed. And this is everything except our land company caps. So what we've got is in town and the caps that the town actually controls that are basically not directly within the town limits, but close to within the town limit. There are 47 standby caps. Then the water companies themselves have 44 standby caps. So a total of 91 standby caps. And then the rest are owned by our claim.
So this list represents the yellows,
Yeah.
on the map.
Yellows are now. So you can kind of see where they are located. So those we are committed to providing water to. Now, the question is, now what JDS Hydro wants to know, where else do we believe we want to provide water? If we were to look at removing the water tap moratorium, what are we looking at? Where would we expand?
I mean, just offhand, it looks like the most convenient for us would be along the tap lines that are already there. If we were gonna do it right? And then other people, if anybody's shown interest with putting houses along those lines, like, and of course, probably urban density first and then out past the new property. I don't know what you guys are thinking.
So I look at the out of town water taps. I mean, first off, I mean, look at Hidden Valley. They have 12 more water taps at Hidden Valley. Do they really need any more water taps? That's a great one.
How many lots do they have?
Yeah.
There's still lots.
There's still probably 12 water taps for sale. Open up water tap sales, we can say X number of water taps security.
Oh, I mean, if there's already a housing development there, I don't know why we wouldn't allow that. I mean, if our system is able to say that.
So,
Well, we're talking about what would we add beyond this picture?
right, exactly.
Right.
We add beyond this picture because so Hidden Valley could develop those 12 lots
Yeah.
and open up those 12 water taps. They have them, they're theirs.
There's
So I would suggest we give priority tap to dense housing development to incentivize,
zoom in a little bit.
Let's take a look closer at just the county.
I want to see this a little closer.
Yeah, so we can see. Okay, now, we want to know the field.
There we go.
Because you can take it down there and be houses on all the little blocks.
Yeah.
Throw it up some more. And we can throw it around it. So we can see the lot size, what's currently on the lot. And then again, purple things through the water depths. That are there.
Can I just talk about my philosophy on this? The thing I'm concerned about is wildlife and sprawl and humans impacting the environment. What I want to see is just me talking. What I want to see is that we densify as much as possible and stay out of the areas that are wildlife and try to regenerate and protect our town from wildfire and those kind of things. And if we develop further, it gets much more complicated to try and prevent wildfires because now we have these homes that are urban interface and we get more urban interface and it makes it tougher and become Californiaized. So to me, like, no, not going outside. A lot of those lions that go outside can't serve much more than what they already serve because the damn line's so small in diameter. They'd have to improve the water line size.
Taking the hard look at the development of the property at the school.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right, this keeps it all in flow.
Yep.
Right, it's a good argument.
But that's just my own strong stance on keep it densify further for the humans.
Well,
Impacting so much outside of the town.
in addition, there's a practical reality to the costs involved of extending out, the further out you go, the more it costs to serve less people. And the closer you can keep it to you.
Just lift the moratorium for in town for a certain number of taps and like give him a number, like maybe. I don't know, I'm spitting here, like 50 more taps in town for like ADUs, just more dense housing. And then see if he can float that. And if he's like, yeah, that's doable, then start there as well.
What about, he's asking us what number do we want, or is he supposed to be providing us with what number we can?
No, he's asking, he's asking.
Well, it's when I first saw it, it's like, I don't know.
We can
Zoom out a little bit again.
What do you guys think the maximum amount of taps in town allows?
That's what they're supposed to tell us.
I know that.
But I'm like, I'm trying to give him something so we can get some data here, you know what I mean? Like, I know, so that's the thing is. Gotta come up with a number.
There's also another issue with the density in town as far as like, people are already building ADUs under the radar. That's right. And they're using one tap for two places. So we don't even, nobody has any idea how many people are doing that, or how many already exist? So that's also.
That's the key.
And so he can tell us how many we could.
For it's about taps to determine the tap numbers, right? For the JDS.
Right, yeah, the key ones, we're looking to put taps and, approximate numbers, and so I think the general feeling, and so the other thing is, so the county is going to bring their subdivisions down. So the close to town, they're talking, what, acre and a half instead of 5 acres.
1
So-
and 2, right?
Yeah.
With 1 acre and 2 acre.
Right.
So that actually, next town, they would start subdividing in 1 acre lot. Which means that they could be demanding house or towns. Close to town, and so demanding more town from the water company close to town. Well, we could say, no, we're not gonna have more depths.
We already have the zoning R1, R2. And those lots are assuming there's potential.
But we're not zoning outside of town limits.
No, I mean within, so when you look at that closer map, all those red dots was what's existing.
Right.
But some of those lots are zoned
Right,
2 or 3,
right.
so that there's the potential there of like.
That's what they could be requesting, and it would be, I'm guessing, first come, first serve, if we're gonna offer a certain number of taps within town, and we just need to make an educated guess on how many we think we want to offer, and then see if you can meet that demand, and I think if we overshoot, then we could be like, no, like say we say, oh, we want 100 taps in town, can you make that happen? Oh, no, we only have enough water for 67, so then you know.
Right, or maybe we just make a general statement is that, we want growth to happen in town in more high density areas.
Right.
And so the priority would be given to high density development, in town, high density development.
He doesn't want a number though. I got the impression he really wanted, like, I want to know how many taps you want. And we're just like, oh, we're asking you for the amount of water. we want.
In essence, though, there's some of this in making that decision or making that suggestion that we're gonna keep all these taps close into town, then what we're doing is we're forcing the hand of the board of trustees to then relook at zoning for being able to do whatever, add extra buildings on large enough sites, so on and so forth. So it's kind of like a push for the board of trustees to have to either step up and say, this is what we're going to do and commit to it, or not. And then that just changes everything. And it also begs the question that we were talking about earlier in terms of communication with the county. So if the county wants to start forcing the issue of developing close into town, that's sort of antithetical to what we were just talking about in terms of being able to provide infrastructure with the least amount of cost. The benefit of doing it in town is that you're going to minimize that cost, right? Whereas once you start going out and you're starting to provide water to every 1 and 2 acre plot that's just outside of town, it's going to get more expensive. That's just a practical reality.
And here's where we're going to clash with the county is if the county is saying in the growth management area, you can't have a cistern, you can't have a well, you have to hook up to a system, and we're saying you can't have a tap. What's going to happen?
Well, I mean, it happens all the time in all kinds of things, which is basically you put the onus on the person who wants to develop the property that they pay for the water to get there. The town doesn't. So if we have the water, assuming we have the water, that we're starting with that question first. If the water is available, then it's the responsibility of whoever wants to develop the property to get the water to them, however far that might be. It's not necessarily the responsibility of the town to run water to them. So it happens all the time. It happened with Quickie Tire that they were looking at redeveloping the road, and the Department of Transportation said it's going to cost you $500,000 to do this. And they said, well, you guys said you were going to do it. And they said, no, we can't do it. So it happens all the time. in terms of that kind of infrastructure stuff that goes on.
So it seems
So-
like the water or the, I'm sorry. He wants, it seems like he really, we're doing this back and forth thing with this, I was doing the water assessment and I'm trying to get to him to give us some sort of data on what is available, even though saying what he
Well,
needs.
yeah, this is it.
And so-
JDS hydro, yeah.
What kind, right, JS Hydro, what does anybody have a suggestion?
Oh, God, I wish I had the document. Please, sir.
Motion?
The specific document.
It seems backwards to me that way.
Yeah, it does.
Because we could suggest, how about we do 1,000?
I think it's great.
Just make up a number. It doesn't really make a difference. At some point, I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying the reality is what do we have as far as the amount of water that we can provide? And what does that mean relative to an average tap use?
I think
That's
we-
what we're trying to get
But we've
at.
already asked that question and he's not giving us the answer, so that's why I'm like trying to get him to.
Instead of doing by priority, instead of giving him a number,
Yeah, can you give him something?
what if we say instead prioritizing higher density growth within town? That taps would go to higher density development in town versus lower density development outside.
And then-
or outside.
Max, how many, let's get an idea, I mean, what do you guys think, Max, how many taps in town? I'm just looking at it, I'm looking at 100.
Per year. Oh, look, you have it. Oh, thank you. Yeah, all right, here is exactly what he said. Analyze inflows, village and production data from each treatment facility along with location and number of potential future tap sales.
So, I mean, can we just say like, wait, can we ask him, like, would 100 taps be feasible in town? Yes or no?
Is that per year? I mean, and is that per year or is that over the next decade?
It says per year.
It doesn't. He said, from each treatment facility along with locations and number of potential future tap sales.
Maybe like 100 taps in the next 10 years, and if you, and then we might get some data there. Can we, like something, you know what I mean? Because he's not gonna, if we just say, we don't know, he's gonna also say, we don't know, and then we'll be back here on this issue.
Never did it.
Yeah,
So can somebody, anybody make a motion?
Could we like look at the zoning map, like R2, R3, whatever, that R1, and then how many taps are on there already? And how many more could possibly be? Because that would just give you a number of potential.
doesn't Jeremiah have that in zoning as well?
Yes.
Is that already? Yeah.
So what if you just made a determination? I know Paoli has some growth in the, at a very steady pace. What was the, very steady. It's flat. It makes sense that it's same. But if you take like in the last 10 years, how many water taps have been sold? And then just make a little bump it to a determination of what you sort of want to see a very reasonable steady growth in this town, and then just calculate that. See per year, the next 10 years, like what those, how many of those taps would be, the projection.
Yeah, does anybody have any ideas besides my 100?
This is a staff math problem.
This is a, yeah, I think so.
And it's just, Sam Shader, how much?
No, I'm talking less,
Oh, okay, so
talking less.
what are you saying as far as?
Basically, that we ask our town administrator to look at the number of taps that could be possible in the properties that are zoned to allow increases and to use that number.
I like that.
And also the idea that we don't increase our population by more than. Well, here I'm just throwing mud against the wall, but we have not grown much in population, but if we're saying we're not going to the opposite, that's going to create a huge demand for infilling, which is what we really want to encourage. So what if they only have to grow population by 20% in the next 10 years? Is that unreasonable?
No, that sounds probably.
You know, so maybe those two factors might give her something to calculate the number of taps.
But then also take the potential taps for the zoning.
Yeah, there's taps that are existing. That's what you're. Yeah.
No, those are standby.
Those are standby.
But we are obligated to provide these. So my point is, the reason I'm holding it up is not all of these are in town. So what I'm wondering is to jump off of what Lynn said, it seems like the zoning and the taps, what is this, how is everything zoned in town? Where do the taps, where are they located within each zone? Where are these that are in town? Where would these go? I don't know if this is already mapped.
It's out, it's on
Yeah,
the,
it's on the map.
yellow dots on the map.
But my point is, you need to, I think it needs to be much clearer than that map is as to where are there gaps in town where there are no taps or places. I think we need to see where these taps are obligated because that's where people want to build. They may not be able to because of zoning. Because where are these taps located? Are they in an R1? Are they in an R2? It just seems like you've got a Rubik's Cube a little bit going on here that needs to be visual. So we can see where these taps that must be served are. And so then what are we left with in terms of in town? Where else could new taps even conceivably go based on size of lot? And potential and the other third level, this is the zoning changes that the trustees have talked about already, but there's been no trigger pulled because of the moratorium. But R1, you know, the R2 will have to be expanded to allow an ADU.
No, not necessarily unless we allow ADUs in R1.
Well, but regardless, something has to be thought about in terms of the footprint of more square footage on a lot. How much are we going to allow? And then which ones already have a tap and which ones don't.
Okay, so that's great. I really like your input. Thank you. I will make a motion that we send this issue to the town administrator and that we include all the taps that we have that have not been serviced. So that's a number. It's in the spreadsheet. And then
Yeah,
I think she's ready. And then
so like 20% growth for the next 10 years is another almost 300. That would make it almost 2,000 people.
so, and then following included in that motion is the town administrator looks at all the potential taps within the city limits in town, the Pioneer town limits, and then that's allowed by zoning. And then also, and this is another item on the spreadsheet, please include a 20% increase in population growth. And maybe bring that to another agenda from the next day to look at it.
Can I clarify?
Or we could just send it. No, GIS. But I just want to make it right. Oh, yeah.
If you want to make motion into the town administrator and have her do a spreadsheet, including standbys and potential growth right now. Included in current zoning.
Town of
And
Canyon.
then another one with 20% growth.
That's like another line, including, like, you'll have, like, each one would be a line, like, this is how many taps we need to service that aren't being used. This is how many taps that could be potentially in the town of Paonia, and then another line is 20%, including 20% growth within city limits.
I got it.
Then we can add that to the next meeting agenda. And I'm done with that motion.
I second that motion.
Yes. All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
I'd like to add something pretty controversial. Do towns ever rescind taps?
That's a great question.
That is a question for a lawyer, because what I'm wondering is if people are not, they're just sitting on a standby tap forever. And they're not, what right does a town have to rescind a tap?
You know, there has, actually, Corinne and I talked about this. And that there have been rules that other towns have that if the tap is not put into service within 5 years, that tap is no longer standby tap.
We have that in Hoxhaven right now. Tap in Hoxhaven would be extended. That, you know, losing that tap And I just think of Donna Littlefield's property. She came to town and asked us, can I get a 5-year extension to my town? There's the agreement to build in Hawks Haven with all the building had to be done within a certain amount of time. She was bumping up against the deadline. So the question I have for our lawyer is, what is the precedent for towns to look at taps and rescind the ability to build on those taps if they are not used?
I like that. Can we send that to the
But
town too?
question on that.
Especially the mine.
Well, I think that's what we did a contract with them, but I don't think we should.
You know, are you talking about like if somebody bought a tap 10 years ago, and then they never built, and they sell their property and the new person's paying the bill. And then, you know, does that mean that that moratorium starts over again?
It's on the property. So this is, I haven't had
That's
something,
gonna make it-
and see, that's why I'm so negative right now. So this is just a question for the lawyer. What's the precedent of towns rescinding tap rights? We have a bunch of houses that people are not building. Now I want to know, what are our rights as a town?
They paid for this.
Yes.
And they paid, yeah.
They-
Which I'm thinking, like, no, it's gotta be doing.
It's gotta be done, that's what it's for. When you bought my tap, it was written that you have to go in a certain time, and you
Right.
that tap, then it's one thing. But if it was there in perpetuity, it goes with the property, and that's the end of it. Because those arch taps have gone, my God, that was in 77. Those taps were there in 77 with that property, when Arch Cole bought it, and have gone with that property.
But then like how is infrastructure good after?
Oh, it's not infrastructure. It's not like there's a line sitting out there waiting to be tapped. It's the potential. It's, yeah.
And so I really want to go back to another issue that I brought up last time, and that is, okay, we voted on this, but what I'd really like to see at some point is an analysis of the zone. Because we talk about, you know, the area you're in, it's an R3. There's no way you could put 3 ADUs there. So to change that zoning, yeah, would change the potential for how many
Exactly.
taps. So it's like, I really think, right,
And that goes to what I said earlier, which is eventually you're forcing the hand of the town council to make a decision. As what do we do if we're gonna try and keep things in close to town, and how do we change, you know, the use of pieces of property to add additional units with taps, if that's what the town wants to make a decision about. So all of that goes together. I think it's really important.
It's really helpful as an advisory board with the town council that we actually come in with something concrete instead of just throwing, you know, here's a concept, what do you guys want to do with it? But if we say, we've looked at zoning and we think this is where it should go, and we're forwarding that to the council for action,
Yeah, 'cause that's
that'll be a lot easier for the council to deal with.
absolutely our job.
So let's put that on the agenda next time and look just generally at the zoning maps for our meeting in January, and we start thinking about it as individual members. Where do we want to see zoning change? What recommendations will we make?
I have one other comment that I want to make about the guy who's doing the water. I don't know any of the history of it. What came up for me was this idea of someone who's avoiding his responsibility.
Oh, this is JDS Hydro. It's not a man, it is a company.
The company, but if they, I mean, in essence, by putting on us to come up with a number, we're not experts in this by any stretch of the imagination. We have no claim to knowing what this is about. That's why they're here, and that's why the town is paying them. They're the ones who need to make a decision about what's possible based on all the factors that go into that. And I get the feeling, because I've been around this stuff before, that somebody is avoiding making some kind of statement because they might get held to it. You know, it's just that, right? They say that we have this many taps, and all of a sudden down the road, oops.
Politically.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that just feels wrong to me.
Yeah.
That's not really us to make that decision, although we're trying to do the best we can, but it's really their responsibility to come up with a number that makes sense based on what our water flow is, and it's not always the same. They're gonna approximate, we know that. Water's not, we know better than anybody that water's not a hard and fast rule around here. Now, we're pleased as punch that we got snow on the ground.
Absolutely.
2 inches, you know?
Exactly.
So,
So far I have for next time, to look at the zoning map. And then Leslie's analysis of taps. Was there anything else we wanted on the agenda for next time?
I mean, other than whatever else she's got lined up, but,
There's a lot of wisdom in what you just said. Thank you.
yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, I don't see why there isn't, you can't just, look at how many gallons we're getting and make an estimate per tap.
Because we still don't have certain meeting gets.
Oh, is that it? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it looks like we're done with today's agenda. Give you our adjournments.
Statement, do you want the inventory of the taps existing and the potential taps to be indicated on my zoning? Also.
We mentioned that. It's already been in that, and that's already in the motion. Yeah,
So we
it's in the motion. All right. I'm hungry. I'm so sorry.
So what?
Yes.
3 weeks now.
I'll be able to drive in another.
There's no not letting them drive or anything.
No, it's a tough one for me. I haven't even been to the shop. Whoa.